Welcome to the Viking Age podcast. It's the official podcast of the VikingAge.com. My name is Chris Schad. I write for fan-sided and zone coverage, and we do this right here on the Viking Age YouTube channel. We're also in podcast form on Apple and Spotify the very next day. But however you consume us, make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe so you never miss a new episode and we can spread the word to the masses. Today, as I always say, it's me. It's that SCHAD. We went over. Actually, I should back up a little bit. Adam is off. We went over the Vikings draft class on Sunday. So we did a show right after the draft concluded, not right after, like 24 hours, but we talked about all the draft picks there. So Adam is off today for that reason. I'm working on getting NFL.com writer Eric Edholm to join me. Hopefully that's going to go down next week where we'll talk a little bit more about the draft class and who they got and that kind of stuff. And we'll go from there. But today I wanted to talk about some news. We got some news this week, and it includes an Andrew Van Ginkel extension, which Adam called in his text a gink extension. I'm not going to use that for the subhead on the screen, but it's worth going over because Andrew Van Ginkel gets a 1-year, $23 million extension. His original 2-year, $20 million contract signed in free agency last year was set to expire at the end of the upcoming season. The exact details as far as bonuses, void years, all of those things, they have not been released yet. So we are waiting on those a little bit. And he will be in Minnesota through the 2026 season when he'll be 31 years old. So all of that stuff is very good news for the Vikings. And I think it's a great move. He set a career high with 11.5 sacks last season. He's a great fit for Flores' defense. I think he's one of those guys that Brian Flores kind of pounded the table to bring to Minnesota. And it paid off in a big way because he is familiar with the scheme. He knows what he's doing. And 2 pick sixes last season. I believe he almost had one in the Detroit game and the Atlanta game. Those were the 2. I was trying to think of what games they were in. But the Kirk Cousins game against Atlanta, he dropped another pick six that would have gone to the house, and he had the same kind of play over in actually give me a second here because I think this is the magic of live. Yeah, I'm on shore. Okay. I was worried I wasn't on the microphone for you guys. I thought I was going off the laptop microphone. So little things that kind of pop into my head when I do these podcasts. But like I said, Andrew Van Ginkel, 2 pick sixes last year. He took one to the house against the Giants, and I want to say one against the 49ers. And then he also almost had one against Kirk Cousins that went over Atlanta. And then the Week 18 game against Detroit, he drops a pick six that really could have swung that game a different direction, but we don't need to go there. He was very good for the Vikings last year, and keeping him around for another year in a vacuum is a very good move, even though it's a lot of money. $23 million over the cap valued his play at $14.75 million. That's not market value like Spotrac does. Over the cap just kind of gives a dollar valuation of how a player is played. It kind of, you can look at it and be like, oh, that's how much they think that player was worth. So Andrew Van Ginkel is getting paid a little bit more than what over the cap would suggest. But, the sack number, 11.5 sacks, that's going to drive your market up no matter what. And it's a 1-year deal. And we've seen Kwesi in the past use those void years where he can spread out the cap hits. So maybe he kicks some money down the road. And I know too, like Adam and I kind of go back and forth on void years. Like, is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? The best way that you could think about it is it's just a way to shovel money down the road. And in the case of Kirk Cousins, I think it was like 22 million when he left. So like you don't want to have that big of a number, but usually, if it's like 5 million or if it's like, a smaller amount, that's okay because the salary cap keeps going up. They're going to keep having international games. TV broadcasters are going to keep paying more for distribution rights. The salary cap and the cash flow coming into the NFL isn't going anywhere. So when you use those void years to kind of push money into the future, it really is a benefit and a loophole for the team like the Vikings, who they want to kind of push all their chips in right now and make their pitch to a Super Bowl. So that's why I like the extension for Andrew Van Ginkel. Now, the natural reaction, and one that I've seen a lot with Vikings fans, is what does this mean for Dallas Turner? Um, maybe should have I said, what does this mean? So people tune in, but whatever. Don't have on-air production meetings by yourself, Chris. The magic of live YouTube. But Dallas Turner, I mean, the Vikings traded a lot to get him in the 2024 draft. Like ESPN Seth Walder was very against that trade in the first place. You send, I don't have the exact trade in front of me, but it was like a second and a fourth round pick or something like that. And two, it came off the heels of the Vikings making a separate trade to get a first round pick in the 2024 draft when they were looking for a quarterback. So when they were trying to trade up, looking at Jaden Daniels, looking at Drake May, looking at those high-end quarterbacks in last year's class, they went and they got that extra first-round pick. They didn't wind up needing it because Washington, New England just stayed at their spots and they picked, and the Vikings wound up, they still had to trade up, but it wasn't this massive, Trey Lance type deal the Vikings had to do to get their quarterback. They just had to trade up a spot with the New York Jets, and they got JJ McCarthy. So all of those things are good there. But Turner was a separate deal based on that deal to get the second first round pick for Houston, which I like the deal. Turner was a blue chip defensive prospect in that draft. You could have made the argument that the Falcons should have taken him at number 8 instead of Michael Penix, but the Falcons, I don't want to say they look smart right now, but they definitely had some foresight when they made that pick because they didn't know how Kirk's Achilles would respond. He is a creature of comfort. So when he goes into a new offense, things don't really play out the way they want it to. It was the right move to take Michael Penix in hindsight, but you could also look at them and say, hey, you should have just taken Dallas Turner. Then you keep your 2026 first round pick, which you traded to get James Pierce Jr. in the draft last week. But Turner's rookie season, 20 tackles, 3 sacks last year, a 64.1 overall grade according to PFF, but a 55.3 pass rush grade. So they didn't like his performance when he was rushing the passer. He only had 12 pressures on 151 pass rush snaps, and his 7.4% pass rush win rate was the lowest on the team among edge rushers. So he was not, sometimes you'll see a player get a low sack total, but they get a high win rate. So they're affecting the quarterback in other ways. Dallas Turner wasn't doing that. And you could also kind of flip that back on Brian Flores, be like, well, he didn't have a lot of opportunities. That's kind of what the win rate does. It kind of balances things out. So we can say, hey, what happened? What was he doing on his snaps? Even though he didn't get that, highest percentile of outcome, which is taking down the quarterback. So you look at all those things and you get nervous. And it makes sense considering recent Vikings history because we're coming off of Lewis Cine. Give me 1 minute here. Lewis Cine, we heard all the positive things from this coaching, from Kevin O'Connell specifically, about Lewis Cine and how is a long-term build and all that stuff. Freak athlete coming out of Georgia. And he didn't get on the field during his rookie season. And he also went ahead and just never panned out. And the broken leg might have had something to do with that. Dallas Turner doesn't have a broken leg right now. So that is a very good thing for the Vikings. But you also look at some of the intangibles, like why wasn't he able to force his way on the field? Why was Patrick Jones a guy that was playing all those snaps? But Kevin O'Connell did have some positive words talking about Dallas Turner during the NFL draft last weekend. He told NFL Network, I hope people haven't forgotten about Dallas Turner. Really a guy I'm expecting a huge jump from year 1 to year 2. He really started to come along as the season went along last year. It's a tough group, a tough lineup to crack when you've got Van Ginkel and Jonathan Grenard playing the way they were. Kevin O'Connell speaks the truth there. And I don't think, like, you remember the draft day video, right? When they made the trade up for Turner, like Kevin O'Connell looked like, you put a piece of cheese in front of your dog, right? Where he's just like really like super surprised that Turner was there. and the Vikings were trading up for him. They were very excited about him. They've said all the right things about his development. Now it's a matter of getting on the field and putting those things to use. And because Turner was there, and it was such a surprise to everybody in the draft room except for Kwesi, I think the Vikings didn't really have a plan for how to use Turner, which it doesn't seem like it makes sense. But he was a luxury pick at that point. He wasn't a guy like Jared Verse, where the Rams were like, oh my God, we need a starter at edge rusher. We're going to draft Jared Verse and he's going to go get double-digit sacks or whatever it was. Like, the Vikings weren't in that position because they already had their edge rushers in Andrew Van Ginkel and Jonathan Grenard. And both of them had Pro Bowl seasons. So when you look at everything, it makes sense why Turner wasn't on the field. Now, the other gripe that you have is Patrick Jones, and I totally understand that. But Patrick Jones had a pretty good season. It was better than Turner's. His Patrick Jones wound up with 7 sacks. His pass rush win rate, I got it written down here, 11.4% win rate. So he was a few percentage points higher than Dallas Turner was in the win rate metric. But, we're just hearing positive things about Turner, not only from the Vikings, but from NFL executives. Alec Lewis of The Athletic was asking around the combine, hey, what do you think about Dallas Turner? Like, should they be worried? Is this a Lewis Cine situation? And executives were pretty much like, no, we're not worried about him at all. And they looked at the Philadelphia Eagles as a reason why you should be excited about Dallas Turner, because they took Nolan Smith Jr. in the first round in 2023. He goes out, he has 1 sack in his rookie season. He's in more of a reserve role. Second year, his role increases. He gets 6.5 sacks, and the Eagles go on to win the Super Bowl. Would be very nice if the Vikings could win the Super Bowl like the Eagles did. But it was also very nice for Smith because now he is a starter. He's a contributor for the Eagles, and they can let some of the other guys that they draft walk away. Like, that is why the Eagles have been successful in what they're doing right now. They're not overpaying guys. Like, when they won the Super Bowl the last time in 2017, they went ahead and they gave out massive extensions, tried to lock everybody in that core, and then they wound up getting old, hurt, and they basically had to start from square one. So the Eagles are basically building a sustainable model that are replacing that talent year in, year out, and they're taking high upside guys like a Nolan Smith Jr., or in the Vikings case, taking a Dallas Turner when you already have Andrew Van Ginkel and Jonathan Grenard, and buying yourself time to develop them. You could also look at the depth chart basically as another positive thing for Dallas Turner. Patrick Jones III is in Carolina, like I mentioned. And the next guy on the depth chart is Bo Richter, who, awesome guy. Vikings fans love him because he had a great preseason, but if he's taking snaps from Dallas Turner, we officially have a problem. Nothing against Bo Richter. He played great. That would be a major issue. So I look at a kid who's 22. This is how old I am. I'm talking 22-year-olds kids, but he's 22 years old. And if Van Ginkel plays out both of these years of his contract, he will be 24 when Andrew Van Ginkel's contract ends. That sounds pretty good to me. And you're still maybe saying, well, actions speak louder than words and whatever. Go look at what happened to the Detroit Lions last year, because they had a Super Bowl caliber team, like on paper. And you could say on the field too, because they had home field advantage. But part of the reason they were upset by the Commanders was because they had 13 players on injured reserve. They lost Aiden Hutchinson and essentially had to scramble to find that. They had to trade for Zadarius Smith, who's still hanging out on the steps of I don't even know what their practice facility is called, but he's basically begging the Lions to bring him back. So, like, the Vikings want to avoid that situation. So you lock in Jonathan Grenard, who I think he signed a 4-year deal, so he's got 3 years left. And you lock in Van Ginkel for another year, even though it's at a high price, but you could smooth that out the void years, maybe kick that cap hit down the road, and you could continue to kind of slow play Turner until he's ready to take over that Van Ginkel role or that Grenard role, because I don't think we're looking at a Lewis Cine situation here. Like, I think we saw him play better towards the end of the year. The coaching staff is very high on him. And again, he is a 22-year-old with upside. This isn't going out and signing a Marcus Davenport to a 1-year deal and being like, well, I hope he pans out. No, you have this guy under an affordable contract, and you can take your time and slope play him because you still have 4 years left on his contract if you exercise the 5th-year option. If everything goes well, you got time to work out his next deal. Maybe he kind of steps, maybe Andrew Van Ginkel gets hurt and Dallas Turner steps into that role and he's an absolute monster. Like, those are things that can happen. And those are ways that Dallas Turner can have a huge jump that Kevin O'Connell was talking about in his second season. So this all comes down to what happens when Dallas Turner steps on the field during minicamp and offseason workouts and during training camp. If he steps on the field and he shows that improvement that Kevin O'Connell was talking about, the Vikings are going to be in a very good position with a very good edge rusher on their hands and a guy who's playing behind another good. And let's not forget, Brian Flores is more creative than a stoner in a Taco Bell test kitchen. Like, he can find a way to get 3 different edge rushers on the field. Maybe he lines Turner up as a traditional defensive lineman, kind of like they were doing with that Jihad Ward role last year. Like, there are ways to find a role for Dallas Turner, even if you have Andrew Van Ginkel and Jonathan Grenard in the mix. So this is a way of keeping good players and making sure they're not in the building, and also protecting yourself that if you go 2024 Detroit Lions and everybody gets hurt, you're not obscenely screwed. So we'll see what happens with Turner. I want to see him get on the field. And again, those Patrick Jones numbers, that's the bar. 11.4% win rate, 7 sacks. And maybe the sacks are a little bit lower. Maybe he gets like 5 or something. But I want to see progress. And that's what I think this contract does. It kind of puts a little more pressure on Turner to step up and really make his way there. So that is the Andrew Van Ginkel, Dallas Turner thing, kind of wrapped in a nutshell, at least in my opinion. Some people may be like, well, Dallas Turner's screwed. And I'm not going to argue with you, but I disagree. Anyway, that is basically it. That's the first half of the show. Thank you for joining me. Chris Schad here. You can follow me at The Real Chris Schad. I'm on, basically any social media platform you can think of. There's X, there's, Threads. I'm on Instagram. I kind of want to do more videos and kind of just do little things during the week. So maybe that's kind of a passion project I'm going to have in a little bit here. And then also on Blue Sky, you can find me there as well. But I want to ask you a question before we get to the second half. And it's, do you want to win up to 1,000 times your money? Well, of course you do. And you can do it at Underdog. To play, just choose whether a player will go higher or lower on their stats, such as points, assists, rebounds, and more. They've got all of your favorite leagues, teams, and stars to choose from. And it is the playoffs for NBA and NHL, which means there's something basically to play every night on Underdog. I've been doing it for the Wolves games. I go higher on Anthony Edwards points. I had a buddy who went lower on Rudy Gobert points and rebounds because he was pretty rough the first 4 games, and he got the sad trombone Price is Right music. But, you could do it for hockey as well. Maybe you think Matt Boldy's going to score a goal against the Vegas Golden Knights in Game 6 tonight as I record this, hours before puck drop in St. Paul. Maybe you like another team and you want to go higher or lower in there. You can put them all together. You can do a big one. You can just do a 2-layer one. Those are the entries that you can make on Underdog, and it's super easy to do. All you have to do is download the app, sign up now with the promo code THEAGE, which is all one word, and you unlock a special offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you make your first deposit. Join in on the fun when you sign up with the promo code THEAGE. Once again, all one word, and you can claim your special offer today and get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly upon your first deposit. Now, you must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama or Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts, Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply, void in Colorado. If you are concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. And in New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. All right. Also apologize. That is, if you hear that, that is my washing machine, which is a center driver. So sometimes when I have laundry in there, it'll whip around like a tire in the Daytona 500 and make some noise. So if you're hearing that in the background, I apologize. Let's move on here. And I want to talk about JJ McCarthy because he addressed the media for the first time since I want to say since his injury. I don't think he talked to the media at all during his recovery. Maybe he did it once, like right after the surgery, but we haven't heard much from him. Right now, Kevin O'Connell won't say it because he wants competition and everything like that. But he is the starting quarterback right now for your Minnesota Vikings. And the one thing that I took away from JJ McCarthy as I grab a sip of water here is that he always wins the press conference, at least the way that I see it. Like, he is honestly the perfect quarterback for Kevin O'Connell because they're both positive. They're both very intentional with what they do. And when you hear JJ McCarthy talk, he comes off as a player who has a plan no matter what it is. And he's informative when he speaks. He's introspective. He's very self-analytical, which I can relate to as we enter Mental Health Awareness Month. Sometimes you think things a little too much and that can be a distraction, but we haven't seen that with McCarthy yet. And he deals with ADHD, like he has a learning disability, and he's still able to dissect all this information and really dive into being an NFL quarterback, even though he hasn't been able to get reps on the field and all of those things. And he does little things too. Like he knows all the names of the reporters, which is a small thing, but pretty cool because, I always, as a former reporter, hey, I'm Chris Schad, I'm from the Register. And some people, they would talk to you enough and they'd know who you are. But other times too, when they come to you, it's kind of like, oh yeah, like you feel like you got a relationship and a connection going. I don't know. But like, I just want this guy to succeed, like more than like, hey, this guy plays for the Vikings, I want him to do well. I really like JJ McCarthy and the person that he's shown us so far. And he's dealt with depression. He's talked about, he has his gratitude journal, which really helped him get through that rehab. But again, when you listen to him talk, it's very similar to Kevin O'Connell, where he gets guys to go into war with him. And that is something the Vikings haven't had with a franchise quarterback. Like, they said all the right things about Kirk Cousins when he got hurt. You can make that argument too. Like, the locker room did like Kirk. Like, Brian O'Neill was making up numbers and, screaming that he wanted him back. Dalton Reisner was in tears. All of those things were qualities that Kirk had. And then even Sam Darnold, like, people were behind him, but also too, Darnold never really wanted, Darnold was really weird because I don't think like he was a bad leader or anything, but I think again, I apologize for that washer. I can hear it through my headphones. So, next time I'll learn a little bit. So I apologize if that's distracting. But I believe that, Sam Darnold wasn't a guy that you wanted to follow. People wanted to fall behind. Like they did. They won 14 games, but he just didn't seem to have that LFG element, we'll call it. JJ McCarthy seems to have the LFG element, and I see it when he gets into his quotes. And these are things that he said during his press conference. I believe it was on Tuesday. He goes, personally, I think the more pressure, the better for me. That's something I thrive off of. They always say the cliche, pressure is a privilege, but that's something you sign up for when you play in the National Football League, especially at the quarterback position. I feel like pressure, all it does is bring out what's inside of you. And I feel pretty good about what's inside of me. And the more pressure, the better, honestly. He also talked about how he handles ADHD as an NFL quarterback. He said this: I came across this quote. People with ADHD, they find calm in the chaos and chaos in the calm. And I felt like ever since I was a kid, any competitive environment I was in, I just felt like I was at home. Obviously, playing at Michigan, there's 110,000 fans in the stadium, and you're at one of your most prominent universities out there. That's just where I feel the most comfortable. He also was asked, why do you think you're ready to start? And he gave the I know I'm ready to start, which if he said anything else, I'd be very worried. They asked him about Aaron Rodgers, and he just kind of said, I basically said, I put my blinders on and I just focus on what I can do to improve. And that is an approach that is awesome considering the year that he just went through, where he couldn't get on field reps, where he had to sit behind Sam Darnold and learn, where he's taking initiative, going into defensive meetings. Harrison Phillips already said that. And all of those things bleed into how a team feels about a quarterback. And SI's Will Raggets jotted down a couple of quotes, and I'm sure I'm missing others because it's just been superlative after superlative about JJ McCarthy throughout this offseason. Ryan Kelly was talking about how impressed he was and how much he's excited to help him learn and kind of cover his blind spots as a young quarterback. Brian O'Neill, he said the energy McCarthy brings to the building every day is infectious. You can tell he wants it really bad. He does all of the right things. Jonathan Grenard, we're all behind him. We're all standing 10 toes with Jay. Cam Bynum was in a good football Good Morning Football interview on NFL Network right after he left for the Indianapolis Colts, and he called JJ McCarthy a maniac just by the way he looks. I think I heard something like, McCarthy has, he's learning all the names of the quarterbacks in the NFL and like their tendencies and everything else. And, Harrison Phillips was on there too, speaking very highly of JJ McCarthy. Like, this guy hasn't even started a game yet. He's barely been on the practice field, and we're getting a steady drumbeat, which is a term that the Audible uses with Cecil Lammey and Sigmund Bloom. And it reminds me of something Cecil Lammey received when Patrick Mahomes was spending his red shirt year, because Lammey is I think he writes, he's on the Broncos beat. So it's like radio or writing or whatever. He's got his radio show out in Denver. But he recalled getting a text from, it was either somebody in the Kansas City Chiefs organization or somebody who was an AFC scout. And they sent him a text that just said, yeah, this Patrick Mahomes guy is going to be a problem. And that scout was right, because Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL. I don't think JJ McCarthy is going to come out and be Patrick Mahomes, but we're getting that drumbeat. We're getting positive comment after positive comment, players lining up, veteran players, not just like guys in his draft class. Like, hey, I think JJ McCarthy is good. These are veterans who have been around the block, and some of them even played with Kirk Cousins, and even they're impressed with JJ McCarthy and how he has handled himself off the field. I think every Viking fan should be super excited about this kid. And we're going to find out, because they have put him in the best position to be successful. We talked about Donovan Jackson in our draft show on Sunday. And that was part of rebuilding the offensive line, where you overhauled the interior. You have 3 new starters in the middle of that line with Will Fries, Ryan Kelly, and Donovan Jackson, assuming he starts week 1. And then you also have two guys in Christian Darrisaw, Brian O'Neill, who are franchise cornerstone tackles. Even if Darrisaw needs a little extra time to recover from his injury, you have a quality depth piece in Blake Brandel, who has started games in the NFL before and can fill in a pinch. I love him in that role where you could just plug him into a spot and go, okay, we need somebody here. Let's get Blake Brandel in there. Like, that is going to be huge for this offensive line, especially if they get banged up throughout the season. You already have great weapons in the passing game. Justin Jefferson, obviously best receiver in the NFL. Jordan Addison, also, I would call him an elite receiver. Even though the production, okay, I have to backtrack because I've been screaming Matt Boldy isn't elite as a Minnesota Wild fan, but I also, I mean, Jordan Addison, very good receiver, like fringe wide receiver one. Like if he was on the Patriots, he would be their top target. That's how I would describe Jordan Addison. But Jalen Naylor, not necessarily a slouch. And then you add Ty Felton to that room. TJ Hawkinson, we said this on Sunday as well. I think he's going to have a much better year 1 year removed from that knee injury because it messed him up. Like I don't even think like I think he's fine physically. I think mentally it kind of messed with his head a little bit because he didn't want another safety going in and, acting like a torpedo towards his surgically repaired knee. That's just kind of a very simple, it's understandable. Like if we wrecked our knee and Kirby Joseph's coming in 100 miles an hour, we're probably going to be thinking about that than catching the ball. So I think he's going to have a better year. You've revamped the running game. You have Aaron Jones back, but now you have Jordan Mason as that kind of that hammer back who hopefully can get some yardage in short yardage situations. So you're not forced to throw all the time. Like by the end of the year, they had to throw every time they were near the goal line because they couldn't run it in. Like even the win against the Packers, they threw it 3 times because they were afraid that Aaron Jones wasn't going to be able to get that yardage. The offensive line and the new back, you have a plan there. Like all of these things help JJ McCarthy. And oh, by the way, you have Kevin O'Connell on the sideline who just got a career year out of Sam Darnold. And you also have Josh McCown, who is a very experienced NFL quarterback and probably a future head coach somewhere, within the next 2 or 3 years. So all of these things are there for JJ McCarthy to succeed. He's saying all the right things, and the time is now. We're going to have voluntary workouts in a couple of weeks here. We're going to have, mandatory mini camp. There's going to be a flurry of information. And of course, we're going to have our eye on that because we have heard the rumors that Aaron Rodgers is sitting somewhere with a voodoo doll, like putting pins into JJ McCarthy's knee or whatever. I know the Vikings trade for Sam Howell, but if McCarthy doesn't have a good spring, that's still a possibility. I think it's a 1% possibility right now compared to 10% or whatever it was when the rumors first came out. But I think McCarthy has to go on the field and he has to show his improvement and he has to show his worth because remember, we've only seen him in one preseason game and he looked pretty damn good, but it's going to be different now. There's going to be a whole different vibe to JJ McCarthy as we go into this season. And it's exciting. It's really exciting to see a young quarterback get his chance, like how he's handling it and everything else. And my feeling right now is the kid's going to crush it. So that is basically what I took away from the press conference is I want to see this kid play football again. And I want to see how he leads this team and basically repays the faith they've put in him because it seems like it is all systems go and JJ McCarthy is ready to roll. All right. So that's pretty much all we have. A very short episode today. Not a lot going on. Like we said, go back, check out our last episode. We went over the Viking draft class on Sunday. It's with me and Adam. Next week, hoping to get Eric Edholm of NFL.com to talk about the Vikings draft class. Just some little news going down today. So I figured I'd hop on and talk about it. And really, I love the fact you guys are jumping on a random Thursday to listen to me, but as always, check out the Viking Age. We got current news on the site as always. Some spins on the Andrew Van Ginkel extension, maybe some things about the UDFAs that you may not know about. Lots of things going on behind the scenes. So you can always check that out at the Viking Age. And also, too, if you missed it, Adam actually sat down over the phone with Dante Culpepper to talk about JJ McCarthy heading into his rookie year. So go ahead and check that out. I, of course, write for the Fansided Regional Betting Network. So I write about every team except for the Vikings for Fansided. So if you're curious what's going on with the Lions, Bears, or Packers, you could check out our sites. We got Dairyland Express for the Packers, the Windy City for the Bears, and Detroit Jock City for the Lions. And we also do some baseball stuff. We're doing Red Sox and Braves right now. And we also do some NBA stuff. And if you're a Timberwolves fan like me and you just want to shit on the Lakers, we've got plenty of what's wrong with the Lakers. Oh man, what's going on? Why did they lose? Anthony Edwards is very good at basketball. That's why you lost. But there is that. And then of course, if you want to read some of my Viking stuff, that is at Zone Coverage. I'll have an article dropping on Saturday. Usually Tuesdays and Saturdays are when my articles hit. I also do Twins and Wild stuff over there too, so you can check that out. But probably going to write about Dallas Turner. I think I'm feeling the vibe there, and I kind of want to be like, all right, let's be a little positive about the kid here. So that will probably be dropping at Zone Coverage over the weekend. But of course, you're watching the Viking or listening to the Viking Age podcast. I am Chris Schad. You can follow me on social media at The Real Chris Schad. We do this every week right here on the Viking Age YouTube channel, and we're on podcast form on Apple and Spotify the very next day. But however you consume us, make sure you're giving us the premium treatment, like, comment, share, and subscribe. That way you never miss a new episode, and we can spread the word to the masses. I'm Chris Schad. This has been the Viking Age podcast.